Cynthia Karsten, Million Cat Challenge. Welcome, Cindy.
Okay, we made it through an amazing day. Hope you guys will just stick with me here for another bit. I will do my best to get us out on time. But if you will permit me, I'd like to tell some stories. And it's all about the Million Cat Challenge. And I don't want to sound like a continentalist, which I apparently found out I am. You folks in Australia cannot join the Million Cat Challenge. It is a North American initiative. Why? Because we had to recognize our capacity and we couldn't extend it to everyone. However, after what I have heard today, I just want to let you all know everyone has really enlightened me today, enriched my life, enriched my experiences, so thank you. I want to encourage you to start your own. I want you guys to start your own challenge. And I know you can after what I heard today. So I would like to be your guidance and having you guys do this on your own. Know that we are there to support you and motivate you and inspire you, but we just can't let you join. So I apologize. Okay, first story. I'm going to take you back to 2007. It's a shelter that is very near and dear to my heart, who I still work with. It was not pretty in 2007. Why? Because they tried to save everything. They didn't know their capacity. And in doing so, there was a lot of suffering, to the extent that this was actually treated as a national disaster. And the only thing they could come up with, someone in this shelter had the job of every morning going around with a wheelbarrow to pick up dead bodies, because they didn't want to euthanize. The only thing that they could come up with to do then was, we have to start euthanizing animals, and they did, and that is sad, but it caused some improvement. It actually led to better welfare. Some more animals got adopted. It actually led to less euthanasia and less suffering, and thus less dying. So, fast forward though to last year, because they didn't want to keep doing this, they looked to new initiatives. They are a Million Cat Challenge shelter. So we were there. So we were not involved with them for 7 years. We were there in 2007 and we went back in 2014 to see how they were doing. We walked in and they had over 300 kittens. What is your biggest fear when you have over 300 kittens in one place? The dreaded panleukopenia. We knew it was lurking, it was coming. It was like right outside the shelter. We're like, guys, you gotta get these guys out of here. They'd never once done an adoption promotion because they felt like they needed the money from adoptions. Totally understandable. And we're like, yeah, but you guys can do this. You can do this. And sure enough, they did it. They cleared their shelter. They got every single kitten out. No one got panleukopenia. It was beautiful. This summer, they extended themselves even more. They took on, so that is one of the initiatives. Don't worry, I'm going to get there. Another initiative is Return to Field. Sure enough, they started doing that this summer. And then sure enough, this was the text I got. These are the texts that make my day. Yeah, that's an empty shelter. And no, they did not get there from euthanasia. These are their statistics. Less cats came in, more got placed in less euthanasia, and that led them to an empty shelter. So, we've been talking a lot about cats today. Sure enough, I got this from a campaign in Victoria. This is the Who's for Cats campaign. Turns out we don't really know how many cats are in Australia. What we can say is there are a lot. Lots of them as pets, which is absolutely fantastic, but there are also lots out and about. It's been estimated that for every one domestic cat, there is about 6 feral cats or community cats. And as John mentioned yesterday, the ways we've used to help and manage dogs, not so much working for our cats, right? We have to try something else. Nell was kind enough. I was not here in 2013, but Nell provided this presentation from me from 2 years ago, because I said, what's the deal with homeless animals in Australia? Come to realize we don't really know. But great, look at that. Better for dogs. But in all that you guys have been doing and all the hard work you've done, sadly, there's been no improvement for cats, which is exactly why you too need an initiative. So, with this comes, okay, by the way, in case you guys haven't known this, I'm here to tell you, you all have superpowers. You all have amazing superpowers by being and choosing to be in this profession, okay? But I'm also here to tell you that your amazing superpowers have limits, okay? Because we cannot control whether people have cats, and sadly, we also cannot control that free-roaming cats exist in our world. I looked for this in Australia, and I'm sorry I couldn't find it. But from Dr. Zito's talk yesterday, we did learn that of the people she interviewed, just about half of the people said they did not get their cats from a welfare source. Their previous cats. Obviously, the ones she was interviewing, they were, so yay. But their first cats didn't come from there. So, I found out you guys have something called Gumtree. Just so you know, in Canada, it's called Kijiji, which is, sorry, I think they got you beat there. People can get cats. They can get them very affordably. This was a search I did a few days ago, and it was not hard for me to look into Queensland and find where I could get a cat. So, another limit to our superpower is that we all know, what's our RTO rate? It's not very good for cats, right? It's great for dogs. We're doing a really good job. We're getting our dogs home, but this is not working. Bringing cats into shelters and trying to find their homes doesn't happen. And one of the reasons it doesn't happen is a lot of the cats don't have people coming to look for them. So putting them in our shelter does them absolutely no good. Now, I want you to bear with me because I have a sad tale to tell. It's been tried to eradicate cats. This is an island off of Africa. It's not a very big island. And guess what? It started out with 4 cats, only one of whom was sterilized. Why? Mousers. They didn't get the memo. Would have worked better if they were all sterilized. So they ended up with a lot of cats. The cats were predating on the birds. So they said, we need to get rid of them. So they trapped some. They gave them panleukopenia, and they scattered them throughout the island. Killed a good % of them. But what did the ones do that were left on the island? Each other, right? So they had more cats. So they hired teams of hunters, and for 7 years they hunted. That didn't work, so they hired trappers. And for over 5 years, they trapped. They still had cats. So they poisoned chicks and released them throughout the island. And sure enough, they were successful. After 14 years, there was not another cat on that island. This was expensive. This caused a lot of suffering. However, it was regarded as successful. However, the birds were not safe. I'm sure you can imagine what happened then, because it's not only cats that are a threat to our wildlife. So, this was the study John referred to yesterday. I'm not sure if you guys have seen it. It is out of your country. They wanted to look at what the effects were of low-level culling of feral cats, and I will, to me, when we pick up cats randomly, the ones who end up in our shelters, and remove them and do not return them, we're essentially doing low-level culling. It's completely random. It's either nuisance or concern-driven. There's nothing targeted about it. We're not doing anything to change where they came from, so low-level culling to me is what we could call it. So they wanted to see what this was doing, to just do this random removal of cats from these 2 different areas. They compared 2 areas. They had remote cameras, and they used analysis to identify the individual feral cats, and they compared the estimates of relative abundance versus their capture, mark, and recapture, because they wanted to compare where the culling happened to where it didn't, and they wanted to compare the population pre-culling to post-culling. And sadly, contrary to their expectation, the relative abundance and activity of feral cats increased in the culling sites, and not by just a little, by quite a bit. They thought at first that it was being successful because they were trapping less cats, and the reason they were trapping less cats is because all of the bold cats were removed. All of the bold cats were also the ones that were keeping the other cats out of the area. So they did not find the results that they need, and they actually showed that low-level ad hoc culling of the cats had unwanted and unexpected outcomes. So I'm here to tell you, this is kind of the state of things here in Queensland. Now, this is a community cat calculator that we put together. We love calculators at the University of California, just by the way. You can find this on our website. So I made some assumptions when I put together this calculator. I assumed, based on what I could find, that 26% of the people in Australia have 1.47 cats, that about 50% of those are let outside unconfined. And I did a pretty good job with that estimate, I guess, compared to the study we heard from yesterday. And that there's one community cat for every 3.5 people. And what I based that on was that there's 24 million people in Australia, and it's estimated anywhere between 5 and 18 million cats, so I kind of went at the low end. So you can see there's a lot of cats out there. A really small percentage are even coming anywhere near our shelters. Very few of those are leaving alive. So that is not meant to be depressing. That's actually supposed to be uplifting, and I'll tell you why. Because this is what we get to realize, okay? This is what we can control. We control who comes in and how they leave. We get to control the conditions in our shelter. We get to control the message that we share, and we can do an amazing job at it. And then, when we recognize all of those things and start doing those things well, then we can focus our limited resources where they're actually going to make a difference. So I'm here to tell you, because the euthanasia of our cats in shelters is not helping, guess what? We can stop doing it. And that's awesome. We also can stop doing this. We can stop crowding our shelters. We can recognize our capacity. We can provide amazing care and the outcome that every animal deserves. And when we stop doing that, we get to answer the question, what could we do instead? Now, those of you who have met me would know that this is one of my favorite books. If you haven't read it, I would encourage you to. It is amazing. And from here, I want to tell you a story. There is a point to this story, by the way, and I am going to get there. So, in 2014, there was a man named Donald Berwick. He was a doctor, and he was the CEO of the Institute of Health Improvement, the IHI. And he had some ideas of how he could save massive numbers of lives. Because researchers at his organization, they'd analyze patient care with the same sort of analytical tools that were actually used to assess the quality of cars, yes, cars, being produced. Because they discovered that the defect rate in healthcare was as high in 1 in 10. What that meant was that 10% of patients in their hospitals didn't receive their antibiotics in a specific amount of time. This was shockingly high. Many other industries had managed to achieve performance levels of an error in 1 in 1,000. So he knew that these high defect rates meant that tens of thousands of patients were dying every single year unnecessarily. So this did not make Donald upset. It merely motivated him. So he knew that his hospitals could benefit from the same rigorous process that was used in the car industry. And so on December 14th of 2006, Donald Berwick spoke to a room full of hospital administrators, much as I'm speaking with you all today. And he said, here is what I think we should do. I think we should save 100,000 lives. And I think we should do this by June 14th, 2007, 18 months from today. Because some is not a number, and soon is not a time. Here's the number, here's the number, 100,000. Here's the time, June 14th, 2007, 9 a.m. It was a daunting goal, but Bergwick was serious about it, and he had a team of 75 employees, and he's like, we are going to do the impossible. So they did it. They came up with 6 evidence-based initiatives, similar to what you all heard today. You had 9. Hospitals could choose to participate if they wanted to. No one was forced to be a part of this initiative. But the hospitals that did participate, they asked that you could be peer support to the others. And so they did it for 18 months. And Donald Berwick came back on June 14th, 2007 at 9 a.m. and he reported to the same group of administrators that through their work in 18 months, they saved 122,300 lives. They had taken his challenge and they'd done it. And so to Donald, he told those people, the patients whose lives we have saved can never be known. Our contribution will be what did not happen to them. And though they are unknown, we will know that mothers and fathers are at graduations and weddings that would have been missed. That grandchildren will know their grandparents that might never have been known. Holidays will be taken, work will be completed, books will be read, symphonies heard, gardens tended, that without our work would have only been beds of weeds. Now, coincidentally, the authors of that book presented at the Animal Care Expo, one of the largest conferences that we have. If none of you have been, please come join us. It's in Vegas this year. And one of the authors presented on this book. And from that, the amazing Kate Hurley, if you haven't met her, challenged everyone at the conference to save 100,000 lives, just like Donald Berwick did. And sure enough, 122 organizations at that conference pledged to save 126,000 lives. Well, if any of you have met Kate Hurley, this was not enough for her. So, she talked to Julie Levy, and if you haven't met her, equally as amazing, from the University of Florida. I owe these 2 women a lot. Came up with, because 100,000 wasn't enough for them, the Million Cat Challenge. They came up, it's a shelter-based initiative, so this is completely shelter-based. Shelters can sign up. It's completely voluntary. They can share with each other, peer-to-peer, and they chose 2012 as the year to be compared to, so the time frame, it's 5 years. We will conclude in 2019. So there are 5 key initiatives that they wanted to balance intake, shelter care, and outcomes. It's all evidence-based. The initiatives that they chose carefully because they've worked. You probably won't be surprised to know you've heard about every single one of them over this conference, which is fantastic, because you guys are already doing some, which is even more fantastic. And shelters can choose to do part. They can do it all at once. They can do it in sequence. They can do them together. It's about saving lives. So here they are, the big 5. And we'll go through them briefly, even though you guys already know tons about them. Okay, alternatives to intake. Keeping cats where they are, either in their home or in the community, when coming into the shelter is not the best choice for them. It can mean lots of things, but at the end of the day, it's not about limiting admission to the shelters, it's about helping in other ways, okay? Does it mean to less intake? Absolutely. I was so moved yesterday by this program. This is awesome, and even though it's called Team Dog, they still have cats. That's awesome. So one of the initiatives is already happening. You guys can do this. And I love what Melanie said, that it's just as much for the people as it is for their pets, right? That's why we do this. We love the animals, but the animals are connected to their people. So let your communities be involved. Let them be part of the solution. They want to be a part of the solution, believe it or not, when we let them be, when we ask them to be. However, people do ask, but what happens to them? What if they don't come in? I really worry about their welfare. Many of you have heard me talk about Tracy in Chico, California. They kept track of it. They did not see an increase. From what they could tell, there weren't more animals getting dumped. There weren't more animals ending up dead on the side of the road. I'm going to talk to you guys more about Betty tomorrow. Betty is one of my favorite people ever in California, and she likes to refer to herself as the hardcore animal control. She wants to be able to offer TNR. They can't. But she's also not going to continue to ask herself to euthanize cats, to ask her staff to continue to euthanize cats in their shelter, so they no longer take them in. And that is okay. You guys are going to learn more about Betty tomorrow, so I'm going to keep you on the edge of your seats, because hopefully you'll join me, because I'll be here again tomorrow, early in the morning. When we talk about alternatives to intake, though, what I want you to realize is it doesn't mean that we're refusing admission to the ones who need us. What it means is it allows us to take in the neediest ones who need us. It's not leaving the public to fend for themselves, it's giving the public a way to solve the problem with us. It's not making someone else do it, and it's not all or nothing. The second initiative, managed admission. So it's scheduling the intake so that it matches our ability to provide humane care, and that every cat, this is a cat initiative, gets the outcome that they deserve. So this can take lots of forms. This can look very different in different shelters. But again, it's not turning away the ones who need us. It is not limiting intake. In fact, sometimes, most times when shelters move to managed intake, they find that they're actually helping more animals and they're doing it better. This too is not all or nothing. However, I'm not going to tell you any more about it. Because if you will join me tomorrow morning, yes, I'm starting off the day, we will talk all about it when I will tell you about Betty and all the other wonderful people that are doing this. So, but how do we know how many we should care for? The third initiative, capacity for care. Because we need to match the number of cats that we're cared for so that we can give everyone the 5 freedoms plus 1, right? To every cat that comes in. We talked about this yesterday. So one of the initiatives is making sure that every single cat has exactly what they need if they come into our care. Starts with housing. We keep them only as long as we need to, and we do everything better. The fourth initiative, removing barriers to adoption. Jan did an excellent job of talking about this yesterday, how we get cats to the people who want them, because people will get cats. You know what? We need them to have our cats. We need to make it easy. We need to make it fun. We need to build these relationships. I meant to give a shout out to this. If you guys haven't read this resource, it's absolutely fantastic. I'm sure it's been mentioned before, but get it. It's free. It's wonderful. And just remember, the ones that give us the most concern, they're the most important ones. They're the ones we need to build the relationship with. They're the ones who need to have our cats. We have our qualms, right? Doesn't waiving the fee devalue life? What if they're returned? What if they escape? Don't we avoid this by screening? Shouldn't I call their landlord? Because we know they're actually going to give us their landlord's name, right? Well, as we learned yesterday, and there's tons of research out there, our fears have not borne true. In fact, the exact opposite. I love Dr. Zito's study. That was fabulous. 93% of the pets, even with adoption promotions, still in their homes, right? People, and even with adoption promotions, people were still thinking about it. Most people said they've been thinking about it for more than a month. I think it's very rare that just because a cat's free, someone's like, I'm gonna go get one. Didn't really want one, hadn't been thinking about it, but it's free. No. So, but let me be clear. removing barriers. It's not being reckless. We're still going to talk to people. We're still going to share information. We're still going to bring them up to being good pet owners and support them, right? It's the beginning of a relationship. It's not the end of one. And again, it's not all or nothing. And the final one, the one that I know makes you all squirm in your seats, the final initiative is return to field. That yes, we take them in, we sterilize them, desex them, we vaccinate them, and we return the healthy cats exactly where they came from. Although, wait, oh, can I go backwards? And I know a lot of the studies were about TNR have been done in the States, and that makes people nervous. But I hope everyone has heard that, they're still cats, and there are a lot of similarities between the States and Australia. So return to field, you'll also hear it called shelter neuter return, feral freedom, and this is different from TNR, okay? TNR tends to be colonies, it tends to be targeted. What this is targeted in the way that it targets the cats that come to us as in the shelters. They come because someone's concerned or someone is annoyed. But the beautiful part about this is it directly impacts what happens inside our shelter, to us, to the other cats, to our staff, okay? That's the beautiful part about this program. Because a lot of cats are coming in to your shelters, and a lot of cats are being euthanized. And when I looked at it, and even if we use the conservative estimate of there only being 5 million of these community feral cats in your whole country, the RSPCA is only taking in 0.3% of the cats that are out there. It's nothing. It's nothing. Which, again, the beautiful part is that it can stop. Now, again, return to field, it's not relocating cats. It is not abandonment. We did not put the cats there. They were already there. We're merely putting them back. This is for healthy cats, okay? It's not for the sick and injured. And it's not giving up on finding home for the ones that we need to. And again, it's not all or nothing. This is always what comes up, wildlife. Yes, I have been called a wildlife hater. There couldn't be anything further from the truth. I love all animals. I don't support return to field so that animals can hurt wildlife. At the end of the day, yes, I will agree. Cats have an impact on wildlife. However, the solutions we've been trying to use are not working. Remember? And here's one of the reasons it's not working. There's your country. It's been estimated that 20% of people in your country feed cats that they do not own. So 1 in 5 people are feeding cats they do not own or claim to own. So a little fact about cats that you may not have known, and everything else that's litter bearing, is the size of a litter that an animal has is directly related to the amount of resources that are available. So, we remove a cat, but we do nothing to the resources that are out there. We remove her, leave everything else the same. These cats, the ones that remain, get more. What happens next season? Their litters get bigger. Now, by removing the 1 cat, we've actually replaced it with 2, which is why the population gets bigger when we randomly pluck cats and do nothing to change where they came from. Now, let's say we put her back where she was, but without her ovaries and missing part of her ear. She will not have these guys. Oh, sorry, the R on them, I meant to remember, that means rabies. Because we have that, sorry. Sorry, I should have removed the R. And the T is toxo, okay? Because I know toxo is a problem and we worry about it. But the biggest concern with toxo is kittens, okay? Because once a cat has had toxo, they shed for a very brief amount of time and then they're immune forever. So if we allow cats out there to keep having kittens, then we keep the problem of toxo. But if you put a cat back, she's already had it, she's never gonna get it again. Makes sense? Sorry, that's the R and the T. I should have removed the R because y'all don't have to worry about it. Lucky you. But lucky us, it does help. The SNR programs, the TNR programs help with that, that we vaccinate animals when they come into us. So now she's still there. She's not having any. And our toxo risk was reduced by 33% because she's not having any more babies. This is why we need to put them back where they came from, unless it's environmentally sensitive. Now, that's different. This is John's study. Amazing results that they've seen in San Jose. The cats love it. How can you not love cats? All right. The biggest surprise is that when we start doing this, when we start looking for other solutions, all those people that are hiding and taking care of cats, they now want to talk to us. Because they see that we're doing something different. We're changing. We're doing something to try and help. We're not going to take their cats and kill them. We engage people so they understand what we're doing. We solve their problem of the nuisance in other ways so people don't complain. We actually solve their problem, because what we need to remember is that removing the cat doesn't actually solve their problem. So we need to take the time to acknowledge the ways that things are not the way they wish they were. Some things just aren't, okay? Our wildlife is suffering, but we need to take that knowledge and start doing things that work. So I want to be able to count you guys in. You are our neighbors. This is a map of all the shelters. When they register, they go on our map. We have our neighbors to the north involved. Those are all shelters that are taking part. But we want this is accessible to you guys, okay? We want it to help guide you. We want you to learn from what we're doing. We want to share so you can share in our successes and our stories. We want it to help in the work that you're doing, because we all want the same thing. We're just in a different country. So, like I said, the initiative is looking at the baseline of 2012 and where we were. But when the challenge shelters do report their data, but it's all put together. We don't want to make anyone feel embarrassed about their numbers, because even saving one cat is a difference. And it's embarrassing for some people to say where they came from in 2012, but it's even more exciting than to watch them celebrate what happens as they continue to implement 1, 2, all 5 of the initiatives. So please don't give up. Even if you only TNR 1 cat a month, it's 12 fewer that are out there. We can make a huge difference. So if you will all permit me, that's where we are. I actually went on the site today. It's up to 290,000 and change cats. But recently in the United States, we celebrated a holiday, Labor Day. I don't know, y'all have a Labor Day? Well, anyways, ours was at the beginning of September. And Kate, Dr. Hurley, she wrote a blog. And I want to share it with you all, so if you'll permit me. And I'm going to stand up here and be completely vulnerable, because I have yet to get through this without crying. I'm going to try, but I'm not going to promise anything. But I really want you guys to hear this to close out our day today. All right, here goes. My thoughts linger with gratitude at what it means to have a life's work, to be given the chance to work daily in the service of life. This may seem out of place in a blog about cats, but in honor of Labor Day, and it was her mother's birthday, she would have been 77, I thought I would share this with you, my beloved Million Cat Challengers. I believe wholeheartedly in the missions of animal sheltering from the first day as a part-time front office assistant in the Santa Cruz SPCA. Whether as an adoption counselor, kennel attendant, animal control officer, or shelter veterinarian, it always felt like an honor to be charged with protecting the welfare and lives of these most vulnerable animals. But as much as I've loved this work, running through it has also been in the pain of the lives we couldn't save and the suffering we couldn't prevent. From the first animal I euthanized, a gray muzzled black lab, to the latest cat who stared out at me terrified from a cramped cage in an overcrowded room, each one holds a place in my heart as the one I could not protect. And for each life that is lost, each instance of suffering unchecked, I also see the toll on the shelter staff. What should be a gift to work in the service of life acquires a jagged edge. Workers struggle without the tools to make good choices. Frustration and sadness turn to apathy or despair. And that's where you come in. And why I'm so very grateful to each and every one of you today. No single one of us invented the tools that are now changing the world for shelters and for cats. But by joining the Million Cat Challenge together, you've not only changed the rules for cats in your shelter, you've made visible the progress each shelter has made and continues to make day by day and cat by cat. You continue to refine and share your discoveries so that every worker at every shelter has a better chance of protecting each life in their care. As of today, the Million Cat counter is rolling at a rate of 624 lives saved by the shelters every day. That's one every 2.5 minutes. So in the hour that it's taken me to write this, 26 more cats are alive because of your work. For every one of those lives, there's a shelter worker whose burden has been lightened. So what I say to you, happy Labor Day. You all deserve a chance to live a good and worthwhile life, and you've given that chance to more people than you know. I hope we all have much opportunity to serve in whatever way our gifts are suited for, and when it's time to rest, to do so in the good conscience and with a sense of a work well done. So, I know you guys can't join the challenge, but I have a favor. Because I want to give something back to Kate. If you all think that you could pledge to save just one more cat in the coming year, I want you to give me the Million Cat salute so that I can take a picture of all of you committing to a pledge to save a life, and we're going to send it to her. So if you can make that pledge, can you make the salute for me? Thank you. Just let me get myself on piano here. I should have prepared. Okay. Okay, wait, okay. Make the salute. Oh, you guys, this is beautiful. And I'm going to get every single one of you. Oh, gosh, it's telling me to slow down. Sorry. It's not my fault. Awesome. Thanks, you guys.
Here's the lovely Todd. Whew. Crikey. Any questions? Have we got the... Yeah.
Thank you. If I may, Kate, I don't know whether you said, but the Netherlands does have mandatory desexing for cats and dogs.
No, only mandatory. No, it's not mandatory. All cats that come from shelters are desexed, but dogs not, because we don't have a surplus population of dogs in the Netherlands. So it's not necessary, and we leave that decision up to the new owner. We do have mandatory chipping. Does that answer your question?
Oh, no, I just read on the internet that you did that owners are required to desex and microchip.
No, it's not mandatory.
Okay. Dr. Google might have got it wrong this time. There was someone over here put their hand up. Just yes.
This is a question for, Marique, is that how you pronounce?
My name?
Yes.
It's Micah.
Micah, sorry.
I
No
don't
wonder
blame
you're
you.
looking at me blankly. You mentioned about you've got rules on breeding and training. So do you have some kind of standard for training or, that qualification that people have to have their dogs trained to or...
I don't know the exact rules, but I can send them to you if you want.
So there is like a standard that
There is.
the public have to meet
Yeah.
when they have a pet.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. More questions? Oh, over here. Keep our microphone people fit.
Hi, this is kind of a general question to everyone on the panel and really everyone in the room as well, just in regards to getting to the root of the problem that we keep sort of touching on. I just wanted to get people's thoughts on sort of maybe shifting a paradigm from pet ownership as a right to pet ownership as a privilege. And although we've heard a lot about sort of everyone deserving to own a pet, I think your talk sort of touched on, I feel that loving an animal doesn't always equate to having the competency to care for one. And I think maybe we need to start focusing on, for example, as a society, we've kind of decided that until you prove your competence to drive a car, you're not allowed to do so. So perhaps we should have some kind of system whereby until you've proven your competence to own an animal and to care for one appropriately and to sort of keep their welfare in mind, that perhaps we shouldn't be able to do so. Is that something that we could maybe talk about or touch on?
Yeah,
or
perhaps we could ask Todd to answer that question. Do we have a microphone? Oh, you have one here. Hiding it.
I think unfortunately that would probably lead to a lot more euthanasia by requiring something like that. I think, and I apologize if my talk gave you the wrong impression. My impression is in my talk and what I was trying to say is that just because there's some minor neglect issues in a household, if someone is in poverty and can't necessarily afford to, say, buy flea medication, doesn't mean that they're any less of an owner than me who can afford flea medication. And which is why I've kind of found by working within the community, working as a government agency that can assist those owners kind of improve those conditions, can keep that animal in that house. Loving an animal and caring for an animal, it's very difficult to try and require some sort of training. It's the same thing with people who just have children. Not everyone's the best best parent out there, but people are allowed to just have children willy-nilly, and there's times the government can come in and assist with things like that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't know if you.
Hang on, wait.
I guess my question is that do people sort of feel like that would be something to work on, maybe regulating and legislating breeding and ownership of animals as opposed to it being a privilege everyone should have rather than a right it is for everyone to own an animal even if they can't adequately care for one or don't know how to care for one?
This is really, really interesting subject. So who feels so strongly they want to put their hand up and talk to a microphone? Thanks, Russell.
Yeah, so our organisation's mission is to improve the health and happiness of animals and the people that care for them. So I'm very strong about keeping animals and people together and helping owners help their pets until it gets to the point where that relationship is not good for either of them. But as an animal welfare sort of group here, there's enough evidence that's coming out to show that pet ownership improves the health and happiness of people. And once we demonstrate that, it's then that the government's likely to put money towards animal welfare because then they see that it's helping people. So I think there's opportunities to help more animals by showing that link, and then hopefully the government might come forward with support for programs to then help the people that own them.
Thanks, Russell. There's one here. There's a group called Anthrozoology. Pauline
Bennett.
Thank you. They're doing a lot of research into how important animals are to human health. And also I think the ACAC report, the latest one that came out, has quite a big chunk in that as well on that. And I think you're absolutely right, Russell. I think the worst thing that could happen to us is that we legislate so much in our nanny state that we actually get less and less pets. And I think that the outcomes of that would just be devastating for society. Oh, and I'm sorry, Nell, I wasn't going to speak and say my opinion. She'll never ask me back next year. Sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Very much of a carrot person, not stick, and what you're talking about is stick. And I don't think you can't make people comply to that sort of legislation. The only country in the world that requires you to take a test before you have a dog is Switzerland. It hasn't proven to improve anything. There is no stats that say it makes for better ownership. I think when people know better, they do better, and that's what we've been hearing for the last few days. We teach, we knowledge share.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Leslie.
My question's for you, Todd. Have you noticed that as you go into the communities and the more that you're assisting people who in underprivileged areas, the more that you're teaching them about responsible pet care, that they are taking on that responsibility themselves? Are you finding that it's having a self-fulfilling prophecy and things are improving?
Yes,
in the less you
yes,
have to do?
manifold. And not only just with reduced shelter intake, but also just with the animal care in the community. As I showed with that one photograph, you know, that particular poodle was on a runner system because of our work within that community. Someone told them that chaining was illegal. So just by having that, by going in and working with the community, gaining that trust, the word of mouth in underprivileged communities shoots like wildfire. It just kind of, you do something positive or you do something negative, everybody knows about it within a week or two. So as you continue to work, it just continues to go on. And I can't count the number of times I go to just different houses I've never been before, and the people say, oh, well, we know XYZ because my brother said you did this or something like that.
So it really helps.
Yeah. And myself and all of our officers are known by name at this point. You know, they'll be like, oh, yeah, you know, Carlos was out here last week and told my brother this, or George was over here, you know, so they know who we are at this point. So.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, just following on that Switzerland thing, but in Switzerland, people are allowed to take their dogs and cats on public transport, out to cafes, restaurants. I've just spent time in Germany and had fine dining, and I didn't even know there's a beautiful German Shepherd underneath the table. You know, he's perfectly well behaved and less. So they're aiming for less dog bites there and hopefully reducing euthanasia. But in Australia, we don't have that. So
we probably
maybe
did.
they have, but they have the
training. We
training.
did once, didn't we? But we had a whole load of local legislation came and stopped it. At one time, I'm sure people were much more free with their dogs in the community.
Yeah. So, you know, they've got the training, you get the licence, but maybe, you know, they can take their dogs.
Yeah.
Cats.
Jackie, could we have the microphone for Jackie? Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. There was a fantastic study by Bruce Heddy in 1999, so it's a little bit old now. But he estimated, they looked at doctor's visits and medication for about 4 key major health issues for heart disease and things like that. And he estimated that pet ownership, and it was dogs and cats, saved the Australian community directly $988 million, and that was by the effect on the direct caregiver. And extending that to family members, he estimated it was $1.8 billion of healthcare savings every year from the benefits from having a pet. And it reduces doctors' visits statistically, it reduces medication for a number of key health problems.
Yeah.
To address the banning, that you have to have a licence and things like that, you have to remember that governments bring in legislation that's popular. And so the question is, if you ask the community, would that be a popular legislation and would they bring it in? What would the answer be? No. The other thing is it costs a lot of money. I was astounded. When the Brisbane City Council, or when the state government brought in a Dog and Cat Management Act, the Brisbane City Council told me in the first year to bring that act in cost them $1 million. And that was for compulsory microchipping and identification of pets for dogs and cats and registration. And so the question is, was that $1 million the best way to spend $1 million to reduce the impact of unwanted pets? Or could it, with targeted desexing and things like that, improve microchip details and compliance, supporting microchip days? Would that be a better way of spending $1 million in the first year? So we have to ask those things. And yes, ideally everyone would be a responsible owner, but the bottom line is, and as Todd says, you take the animal away and they get another animal. So let's work on things that we can change and make a positive difference.
Thanks, Jackie.
And thanks to the speakers today. God, you're so inspiring.
Well, if there are no more questions, one last question.
I'm going to be really brave and add something to the whole banning question a bit earlier, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Pauline, but I work for her 1 day a week, so I kind of spend a lot of time with her and generally get to hear a lot about this, even though I'm the crazy dog lady. So I think it's a bit of a matter of changing the way that we think about, I suppose, the value of animals. And so everybody knows with cats, there's this whole issue where the crux of it is, as generally as a society, we undervalue cats, yeah? And so while we all stand around and we say, as a group, go out, mass cull cats, the kind of basic message of that is cats aren't really worth much and it's okay to kill them en masse, yeah? And there's a pretty direct correlation across countries between the value of human life and the way that companion animals are treated. So if you are turning around to people and saying, because you don't have a lot of money, you're not worth very much, you don't get an animal, you're directly devaluing people, yeah? And as a consequence of that, you directly devalue pets. And so you really need to flip it on its head and say, we value you as a person, we value these cats as individuals, we value these dogs as individuals, and then as a process, everything gets better. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.